Let me turn this so you can't. Well, maybe they can't hear. Bonjour. Okay.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Nijinagiwa. How are y'all doing? I don't know if y'all can see this. I'm gonna try to come in on this a little bit here. Bagaji Ketnam Norden Zagich. There we go. Let me see if my screen, let me move it up a little bit. John Gikin the sing Gishpan Yan Ewikinomage Yan Gom. I didn't know if I was gonna be here to teach today. I'd go to the Pinoges Spitkiwan office, the doctor office, the baby doctor office. Speaking of my baby on the way, I might mention that sometime in the next 3 weeks, we're gonna have probably a little hiatus. Depending on when my new Pinoges is born, probably won't be teaching that week or whatever, so take a little time off, spend it with the baby. But I don't know when that will be, so it'll be like, hey, we're not having class. And if it happens real abrupt, it'd be real abrupt, like, hey, my wife went into labor at 2 o'clock, so we're not having class or whatever. So, but I'll try to give everybody notice, so everybody knows what's going on, if at all possible. And then also, as we get closer, I want to mention, as we get closer towards June, we're getting close to our annual festival here in Shawnee. So we'll probably take a little hiatus from the class, probably sometime, probably in May sometime, maybe around late May or something, but June definitely we won't be doing class. Give me time to get ready for that. And then we might start back up for a little while in July, but then there's going to be a small break because the Potawatomi Gathering is coming up July 25th in Escanaba, Michigan. So there'll be a little pause, but we'll try to keep you filled up with all kinds of online content in the meantime. We got a lot of videos we're constantly making and hoping, we're working on this Woolaroo thing right now with Google, which is kind of cool. I was telling some of the students here on site about it, and it's this new program where this app, I guess, where you take like an image and you like capture that image and it says the words, like you take it over like a tree and it says Tuck tree, or you take it over a car and it says Dabian. But basically you just take either you just visually get it in your camera and then it says it. Not exactly sure how it works, but it's a new program that Google's got. They basically took the 1,200 most Googled terms, if you will, and that's kind of what the list came from. But because of that list, I will say that we added a number of words to our dictionary, as one of our students noticed recently. We've now cracked the 10,000 barrier. We were kind of stuck there for a while, about 9920 or 9915 for quite a little while. I just hadn't been doing a lot of work on adding new vocabulary, but with this new list that Google gave me, made me think about all kinds of words, like and how would we say infrastructure? How would we say, there's just fashion. I was talking to them about fashion. I did not come up with one yet for fashion because fashion's complicated. I mean, it's like it's clothing, it's jewelry, it's trendy, it's not trendy, but it could be even beyond clothing. It could be like cars, and it could be fashionable to be fashionably late, or whatever. So fashion is was a real mind bender for me. I had to think about that for a bit. I didn't come up with something yet for that, but some of them were just good words that I just hadn't really ever thought to coin, if you will. And I was like, okay, or there are words we already had partial concepts for, like maybe we had cooking, but we didn't have cooking in this way, or maybe we had. I don't have your what was that thing you were asking me for?
Pressure cooking.
Pressure cooking, but I'll come up with something for that eventually. But because I remember that every time I talk about cooking now, I think about pressure cooking. So eventually it's going to rattle around a little while, and I'll figure something out. So today, again, so I got a little sentence up here. I thought we'd do some sentences. And people are always asking about cultural things and things like that. And I thought, well, let's talk about some cultural things. Let's talk about it in the language and talk about what some of those concepts and those words might be. And so that's kind of where my train of thought went. I can't promise my train of thought will finish out that way, but at least started in that direction. So, atsugnagen nui pequesque bawamshe webtamget. Na pequeneswa o bamadzit jishuk egibid yet. So atsugnagen nui pequesque bawamshe webtamget. Anybody have any idea what this little section up here might be? I bet you recognize this word. Maybe. Perhaps bawamshe, before.
Yeah.
Before. That's a word that
But
pops
it's
up.
not in your dictionary, by the way.
Bawamshe? I'll be darned. Well, that's-
But it's, yeah, but it come up that way. Maybe
You know what it is? I bet there might be like maybe it's got like one of these on it. Try putting bawam and see if something comes up. It's a little fickle sometimes on if we marked it maybe with a little marking. Sometimes it's like that. But
So
bawamshe.
you're right, it's got the.
Yeah.
diacritical mark.
It hasn't quite figured out how to do these diacriticals quite yet. And so occasionally, if you're looking for a word and you're not quite certain, you might just give like a little bit of it, and it'll show you everything that starts with like BW, BWA, BW, and then just kind of work your way toward it. It's a work in progress with the diacritical E and making it work. Atsugnagen, what about Atsugnagen?
Hey, Justin, is there any way you can shut off the half of the lights?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
That one.
Is that enough light? You want me to sit? Okay.
Does that look good?
You okay with it?
We're
Let me turn
good.
it. I can turn it.
No, we're good. Yeah. Can you see better online?
Can y'all see better?
Konage.
When okay. So Atsugnagen. Anybody know what Atsugnagen is?
I do not know what get start something.
Yes. Which one did you say?
What
Yeah, webta means to start. It starts, or before it's gonna start.
I
I
will.
guess I could have added to this a little bit. Oh, now just snowing. Add that to it. Maybe I should get rid of my weird. Put it over here for no reason. Just there we go. There we go. What is a magician? Anybody?
Gathering?
A gathering or what else could it be? I mean, what's another way? A meeting or a gathering, but magician means together. Yeah. So it could be a meeting or a gathering. But I mean, instead, if you think about it in English, it almost means the same thing like this. Hey, we're at this get together. We're at this meeting. We're at this gathering. So, Atsugnagen nui pequesque. Okay, what's nui?
I will.
I will. Will or want. Pequesque. Anybody know what that might be? Does anybody know what pequene is? Get. It can be that outside sometimes.
Smoke.
Smoky. So this is Smudge.
Oh,
Quesque. Smudge. It's like a little bit of smoke almost. Almost kind of like the S
I
for
will
like,
smudge the room before I start the meeting.
I'm gonna smudge the room, or I want to smudge the room before we start the meeting. That's me. At Sugnigan room, Nui Paquesge. I will smudge Bawamshe before webcam get before it starts. Oda now just in this meeting. Gada that's the letter here. No. No, there's not. Gada Paqueneswa or the mods it Jishuk Egi beat get. Gada Paqueneswa or the mods it Jishuk Egi beat get. What about Bamadzit?
Good way.
That's Minok Madzit. Yeah, Minok Madzit, like this person. So a person, because Bamadzit Juk would be people. So person, Jishuk Egi beat get.
You should smudge that person
Could you? So could you
or would.
or would you? Yeah, could or would you smudge him or her, that person, Jishuk, just Egi beat get.
We get welcome come in, right?
Come in, yes. So
But
just
we
entered,
Just entered.
just entered or just came in. So like somebody just showed up. So Gada Paqueneswa or Bamadzit Jishuk Egi beat get. So could you smudge that person, that individual that just came in? Jishuk Egi beat get. And smudging is an interesting thing because people call me up all the time. They want me to go like smudge their house or something. I'm just like, you can smudge your own house. It's not like there's nothing, it's not like you need a certain person to do it. I mean, basically all you need is a conch shell. If you got something, you don't even need that, honestly. You can just have like something to hold the sage that you're going to use. And then different people, I mean, I always start with like, I'll do this in Potawatomi. Make that part of my, I'll talk about it here in a second. I'm going to we a yo wat o kano migwin. Kano peneshi, mamo maj.
Have one, thanks.
Nan go again we a yo wat o kano migwin.
Sometimes. Someone or somebody.
Someone. What is it? A yo wat. Now this one is not what you're thinking. This is not the wat. This is the whole
Not
verb
the
here.
conjunct one.
Yeah, this is the conjunct, but it's not the it's the he or she form. The verb itself is yo wat. Use something animate.
Okay.
Yo was to use something. Yon is the one we do a lot
Sometimes
of.
someone will use an eagle feather.
Sometimes someone will use an eagle feather. And feathers in Potawatomi are animate. Not only the fact that also eagles, but that probably, to me, it's double animate, but
Yeah, no kidding.
doubled up the animacy, but eagle feather, miguin is a feather. But a feather in Potawatomi by itself, feather is animate. So sometimes someone will use an eagle feather. Kano o paneshi, mamo shput bamashi. Kano o paneshi, mamo shput. Eagle.
Mhm. Paneshi is bird.
Yep, she said that.
But Mamo is like greatest, big.
Those are the large feather.
A fan?
Shpa. Bamashi. What's shpamuk?
Highest.
Yeah, you're on the right track. So mamo shpa bamashi. Bamashi is to fly. So the eagle, Kano'o Paneshi, Mamo Shputbamashi. He's the bird that flies the highest. It flies way up there, the most up there, basically. The one who flies the highest. And carries our Madmawan Iba Mamogosnan.
So
Carries
what
our
is
bird.
that?
So this whole thing would be, the eagle is the bird that flies the highest. Kano Paneshi Mamo Shputbamashi. But the whole word is shpamuk, just means it. Shpamuk. Spelled there. Shpam sagol,
That means up high.
up or high, up. I guess together it would be like the most upward, basically, literally, the most high. Yeah. Shpamuk, like above, the most above. It's kind of in English what you'd be saying. He flies the most above. But whenever we talk about like up, we're saying shpamuk, up, the most up. So shpamuk, shpam sagok, somewhere above, shpam sagok. You could even say like, what's that one word? God, Shpagade noni anquidon. Shpagade noni anquidon. Or I'm sorry. Shpagode. There we go. Shpagode. I was like, oh, look right. Shpagode noni anquidon. What about anquet? What does that mean?
Cloud.
Cloud. Anquidon is clouds. So those. Shpagode non. Gode
Up high.
means
Those.
hang. It's hanging.
Yeah.
But high or up. Shpagode non. So those clouds are hanging high. They're hanging up there high. Shpagode non ni anquidon. Anquidon. Those clouds are hanging high. They're high up in the sky. Versus, I guess, low down where they're like getting ready to burst out,
Or fog.
Yeah, or fog. How do you say fog, Emma?
Lindsay one.
Windseawind. Good, windseawind. What about drizzle or light rain? Kind of related to that.
I was gonna say, it starts with Weiss, I think,
Close.
like Weesty way.
Windseawind is foggy. You're on the right track. Windbisa.
I knew I had a B in there. I couldn't
The B is
remember where.
kind of liquidy part of
Yeah.
it. The bisa.
Yeah.
So drizzle or light rain. Kind of a misty type rain is what this would be describing. And it's not the only way you can say light rain. There's several ways, but this would be like a misty type rain. Windbisa. Now that I've really chicken scratched this board, I'm going to move on to a different one. I don't know what was going on. I got a little wild there. I'm going to move out of this one. I only got one thought out here, so that's great. Okay. Let's see here. I'm not rethinking with this. So. So Wapchkowiak, Wishpamiskos, Sema, Kishki. What's that Wapchkowiak?
What sage?
Wishkamiskos.
Sweetgrass, yeah.
Mhm.
And then
And what,
tobacco.
and I will point out here is that one word you will hear in some kind of mixed communities, you'll hear Weengosh. too, for- Weengosh. And then Sama, tobacco.
Okay. Let me see the-
So these are our, sometimes referred to as meow mashkukkiwana, or four main medicines or four medicines. And, and these are just kind of a touch on some of these, because some of the stuff that we use some of these medicines for, there's other plants that we could use also, like you can use yarrow to ward things off. You can use, there's a lot more plants that can be used in similar ways, but these ones have kind of come to be kind of fundamental. And for some people, it's like that's just their go-to ones, but there's others that'll do similar things. Wapshkabiak is what we use to kind of get rid of bad spirits or bad energy or bad feelings. Sage. Now, there are some people that like to mix all four, and that's okay, I suppose. I mean, that's just what they would choose to do. But for me, I always stick to sage if I'm if I'm like wanting to smudge off, question get wigwam. I'm trying to smudge my house. I'll use Wapshkabiak sage. And the key about smudging your house, and like I was saying, it's not something that anybody can't do. Basically, all you need is some sage, a way to light it, something to hold it so you don't burn yourself. I usually use a conch shell, but even those can burn you if you don't watch it. A pot, or what do you say, like a skillet, some people will use too.
We're using abalone.
Abalone shell, okay, abalone shell, or even
I've
like,
been known to just use a ceramic, like little bowl.
yeah, even whatever works. I mean, a skillet will work. Basically, anything that you're not going to burn yourself with. I mean, you don't want to whatever whatever you're trying to drive at your house. You don't want to be like, I'm going to drive you out. No, I'm going to burn myself instead. So and the key with smudging really is to try to kind of get the entire area. So like if you're going to smudge your house, don't just ignore the bathroom or ignore this closet or ignore. Basically, you want to try to go all the areas of your house, and you don't have to it doesn't have to be like a cloud of smoke. Like you don't have to set off the fire alarm. It doesn't have to be like, I can't see my way through the smoke kind of thing. It just has to be a very small amount. In fact, even that act of smudging, a lot of times I tell people this, it's weird because if you do it enough, even if you go kind of go like this, you can almost smell it, you can almost smell it. You can almost feel it. Like if you don't even have it with you, and you can almost, because this is how I usually will smudge up. I'll usually bring that smoke towards my head, kind of towards my hair, kind of bring it towards me. And then I'll try to bring some of that smoke down my arms. And then if they're doing it with like a feather or something like that, I'll usually turn around and let them, if they want to go get my legs or whatever they feel like. I mean, I'm not going to be like, hey, you didn't get my toad over here, but if they're willing to kind of do that, I'm like, okay, good. I'm good now. Like if you ever see me at the general council meeting where they usually smudge off before the meeting, I think I take up too much time. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. And then because some people, they don't really want a lot of smudge. It's kind of like they feel like maybe they need to do it, but they don't necessarily sure they want to do it. They're not really sure what it's about. Is it going to mess my allergies up? Am I going to have allergic reaction? What is this they're using, Am I gonna, people have all kinds of strange thoughts in their mind when they see people smudging. And so some people, you'll see them, they'll just be like, boom, out of the way. They're like, get away from me with that. Okay, good enough. The other thing that I was taught, and not everybody does this, honestly, today, I rarely see people do it, is to take off your glasses when you're smudging.
I didn't know that.
Take off your glasses and bring that smoke in that way. That's something that I've known for a long time, but sometimes I forget to even mention that to people. It's not even something I think about. But and then a lot of people will stand up too. It's also pretty customary to stand up and be smudged versus now, if you're not able to stand for some reason, that's understandable. Like you're in a wheelchair or whatever, or it's going to cause you great pain. But if you're able to stand up and be smudged like that, it's a good thing to do it that way. So I'll usually smudge off my entire house with Wapshkabiak. And then Wishkamiskos, Sometimes, depending if I have, number one, if I have the time, because I have a big house, a lot of crevices, a lot of kids, if I have the time, or if I really just want to give it an extra positive kind of vibe or positive feeling, I'll also light some Wishkapamishkos, do the same thing, and I'll smudge, but basically I'll follow behind the sage that I used, and I'll smudge my house with Wishkapamishkos, which is sweetgrass. Sweetgrass attracts positive energy, positive spirits. But I also use Wishkapamishkos in other ways. Like they say that when we gather sweetgrass, we're supposed to braid it like our mother's hair. And so usually you'll see it braided up like as a braid. Myself, I like to hang some in my cars. I also hang it over all the entryways into my house. In my office, so the doorway there. I mean, basically all the entry points into my home, I have sweetgrass above the doors, like a braid of it. In my cars, I have it. And if I don't have sweetgrass in my car, I probably have an eagle feather instead. I got one or the other in my cars, just kind of watch over things. So some people, and that's the thing with eagle feathers too, Kanomigwin, eagle feathers, that a lot of people, they don't know what to do with eagle feathers. Like I get people all the time that call me up. They're like, hey, I ordered a bird, like an entire bird. Now what am I going to do with it? I'm like, really? Because it takes like 2 years to get a bird usually. So you had 2 years to think about it. Now you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. No, that's yeah.
Why would you order it if you didn't have a plan to use it?
Sometimes
People just, I tell you, this is my personal opinion on that. I think sometimes people, they feel entitled to certain things, and so therefore they feel like they need to have them to justify maybe their Anishinaabe-ness, their Indianness. So they're like, okay, I need to have an eagle feather. I need to have some, and so they feel like, okay, I can have an eagle that other people, Chimokman, Bamajuk, Bawa, Eto, they can't have. So they want to have this feather that other people can't have.
I do know of an example where someone ordered feathers, just wanted feathers, but they sent them the whole carcass of the animal, and that was that.
Another thing that I always warn people about is that sometimes when they send you an entire bird, a lot of that times they send it to you freeze dried and vacuum sealed. So like it'll come like no, and don't open it if you don't plan on using it right away. I had a person open it up, basically like look at it like, okay, and then they're like, okay, what am I? Okay, I'm gonna put it back in the freezer, and it got freezer burned, and it basically ruined all the feathers.
The feathers will change
After being exposed, I mean, they'll change yellow, and some of that yellow you can't get off, and it's just like they're ruined, and it's like, that's terrible. But like I said, people will order feathers thinking that they need them for something, and they realize most people don't need a bunch of feathers. Most people either, what I would suggest using an eagle for would be, if you have feathers, a lot of people will use one just for like hanging in their house, or maybe hanging in their car, maybe one to smudge with, a fan, a naming, if you have a naming ceremony, you're gonna gift some feathers to somebody, a fan. Myself, when I got a full bird, I actually was getting it because I was making a bustle, and a bustle requires a lot of feathers. So with a bustle, I was able to use quite a few feathers, and then also make some fans out of the other ones. So you can make fans out of them, bustle. But then the other thing is, a lot of people, they don't understand what to do with a bird, the parts they don't need. Like, well, I don't need this part or that, but like me, I used quite a bit of it, because like the claw I used for like a dance staff. But there were parts that I didn't use. There were parts that I did not have a use for. One of them was the head. I had no use for the eagle's head. Now, you see different groups that'll make like a staff, like an eagle staff, but usually that's a nation staff. And myself, I don't view myself as, even though I have quite a few kids, as my individual nation or head of some larger groups. So I didn't have a need for that eagle head. And see, for some people, the problem becomes they think that they're being disrespectful if they don't use it. Well, it's actually different. It's actually the opposite of that. You're actually being more respectful for not using that if it's not something that is supposed to be used in that way. And I've ran into some folks that have done some stuff with some eagle heads that just kind of made me go, ew. Like they really meant to be respectful. It just didn't end up that way. It didn't work out that way. They either like mounted it in a way that you just can't imagine. I'm not even gonna go into that. or that they put it like on like a staff where they're like an individual and they just have like a staff. I'm like, dude, what? Really? Okay, whatever. But again, I'm not saying this to judge other people. I'm just saying that if with it, like what I was told to do by Billy Daniels was the parts that you don't use of an eagle, you burn it and then you bury it. So what I did was the head and the excess parts that I didn't use, I started a fire, I burned those, and then I buried those. And then to top it off, it's good to have even like a little meal maybe and recognize that bird and kind of acknowledge it. It's always good to have a meal to acknowledge spiritual things or good things like that, whether it be a drum, whether it be an eagle, or whatever. It can never hurt to do those kinds of things. But anyway,
I do have a question. I heard that when you smudge your house, to open the window and open the doors, so that
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
if you're.
Mhm. Runs it
depending on
out.
Why you're smudging,
Uh-huh.
that wasn't a steep deal, that the person felt like something was there that shouldn't be.
Yeah, if you definitively think that there's something
Yeah.
in there, I think it's
And she
definitely a
was
wise
told
thing
to
to open a door.
Make sure, open the cabinet, open the
Yeah,
window.
yeah.
Make sure they have a place to
Yes.
go.
Yeah, there has to be somewhere for it to get out, but also
So
you
I
can't.
didn't know if
But
that-
that's why
you heard
also
that,
with,
yeah.
I have heard that before, not to mention that. And also that's why like with smudging, you have to make sure you hit all the areas, because what you don't want to do is if you do have some kind of negative spirit in your house, you don't want to drive it into a corner like, oh, now it's over here and that's just where it's going to hang out
Yeah.
in your closet or wherever. Doesn't mean you have to necessarily, again, you don't have to like smoke it out like intensely. Like you don't have to like, all your clothes don't have to smell like a campfire afterwards, you just have to just a little bit in there, a little bit's enough. It's powerful stuff. It's just a little bit goes a long way. It's like that with a lot of our medicines, same tobacco goes a long way. I was told when you give somebody tobacco, like if you're going to give it to them in a pouch, you're actually supposed to open that pouch up first, take a pinch of that tobacco out, give them that tobacco, physically hold it if you can, then you can hand them the rest of the patch. Because there's the thing about that tobacco, when you hold that tobacco in your left hand, that's where I was always told to hold it. You hold it in your left hand, those thoughts and feelings all go into that tobacco. And, and then when you give that to somebody else, that kind of, it's like you're transmitting between each other these feelings and thoughts and emotions. Or if you take that tobacco and you offer it to the fire, that smoke coming up is kind of that visible manifestation of your prayer going up in a way. But tobacco, a little bit can go a long way. Like when people give me tobacco for like a naming, or they want, if somebody wants like a particular bit of, cultural knowledge and they want to offer you tobacco to do that or to do something for them, you also don't have to accept it. You do not have to. You don't have to be like, even if they hand it to you, you can hand it back. I mean, if it's something that you don't feel right about doing, or you don't feel comfortable to do, or you just don't feel like you're up to it, or even if you just don't have that moment in time available to you, like if somebody's like, hey, can you do this on the 31st of whatever, and you're like, I'm in California on the 31st or something, like, you can hand that back. There's no disrespect in giving that back, but you don't want to keep it if you can't do it. You do want to pass that back if
More
you can't
important
do
to
it.
say- Probably even say, hang on to this.
Yeah, or wait a minute, let me think about this. Let me
Yeah.
see if I can really do this for you. And I'll try. But they also say, that you should help people the best that you can. If people ask you something, if you can't help them, you should try to help them. But again, a little bit of tobacco goes a long way. And the things that we use tobacco for, Gishpan, we niska det zagich. Zagich. Ida. Get not forget. We niskadet zagich kadaba get na o sema. We niskadet zagich kadaba get na o sema. What am I saying here?
Well, we've got outside and we've got tobacco.
Yep. So outside, zagich, and sema, tobacco.
Good does you want to do something?
You should or could. Begedna osema we niskadet. What's that we telling us?
Will? future?
Will or the future? Niskadet.
You know, I know that word, but
There's different ones. You could say niskadet. You could say, I could say weekmoen. Niskadet. It's gonna storm. You can say meashkis get like bad weather. Meashkis get. There's lots of ways to talk about the like stormy weather. Meashki, you can say kadewanquet. Ebiawat, black clouds are approaching. Kadewanquet, black clouds. Niskadet, stormy. So if it's going to be stormy outside, gada bagedna.
you
Put
should
down.
tobacco.
Some tobacco. Bagedna osema. So let me change my color here. Sorry.
What is that last word?
Madame Mosaic.
Dumb.
Madame Mosaic. So, Chon Mikwinde Sing Godak. I should say ye. I should say. In, well, no, it makes sense in the sense of this. Now that I think about it, right. So, Chon Mikwinde Sing Godak. So, Chon Mikwinde Sing Godak. What am I saying there?
That's a negative.
It is a negative
Got
statement.
the cho and the C.
Cho and the
and
C.
Work.
That's Mikchui.
Oh, okay.
Remember. So this sense, since it's
Don't
negative, it
forget.
means not remember. So I'll
Don't
never,
remember.
You won't remember?
that's actually not what, actually, I said the wrong thing. What I was trying to say is I'll never forget, but that's not what I wrote here. I wrote, I'll never remember. So I will always maybe, I will, Freudian, not Freudian, just brain part there. Yeah, nah. So I will always remember Ngodak once. We niskadet. It was
Gonna
going to storm.
And
Web Noden. What was that web top?
I put your house blue.
It started getting windy, Web Noden, wind started blowing, Web Noden or Web on Metz, another way I could have said this. Yeah, for real, on Met. Go to Dem Mosaic. I ran out of room for my entire thought. Go to Dem Mosaic. What is Dem Mosaic? Anybody know what that is? Dem Mosaic.
oh,
What about-
run or
It's a people, some type of people. These old ladies. No, I wasn't talking about you.
Laughing.
Old ladies, Dem Mosaic, and Quasiac, that's old men. And so I'll always remember once when it was gonna storm and it started to get windy, or the wind started to blow, these old ladies, and then I ran out of room.
Like, really? I'm like, well, something's always going on. Are you still gonna go do Monday and open house next week?
Yeah. Those are the ones you did?
That's, these are the ones for the park.
Begedna.
So these are the,
I can hear you.
Oh.
That's okay. Again, not Osema.
these are the,
Megwajana. So they
So the old
went
lady-
and got
they
or
went and
fetched,
got,
basically
Oh.
fetched something animate. They,
That's tobacco.
fetched the tobacco,
and actually I should say, I'm sorry, they fetched.
they fetched.
They fetched Osema Mina Begedna what? And they put some down. I'll never forget this time. It was at an immersion camp years ago. And I tell the story all the time, but it's like, that was kind of my first really kind of realization about, like, I guess really being serious about these traditional ways, real seriousness
It's
about it.
just
And real, just like, it was like a
It's
knee jerk,
natural. It's
very natural. It
natural.
was like a,
It's like, hey, there's. a
Bam,
storm coming, you
okay,
just put it
boom,
down.
you just-
Instead of, like,
and
turn
they
it on your
went,
TV
yeah,
or
it was
whatever.
like you turn a light switch on, exactly. They heard it, they heard the wind started blowing, they realized the storm was blowing in. They immediately stopped what they were doing, went and grabbed their sema, and then they put it down, but get not Beshoch Besuk by this little lake, this little pond there, Besuk. They put it down, and I was like, okay. And I didn't at the time.
Yeah.
And
Well,
later, that storm blew in and it blew my tent like up in a tree, and I evacuated my tent and went into my car, slept in my car that evening. But that had it was a profound moment for me, like, okay, nature is a powerful, powerful thing. These spirits, these ways, but these ways are powerful too. You put down that tobacco, acknowledging that those spirits,
it'll
that
save your life.
is a good thing to do. And so many years later, when I lived down here, Egi Dayan Gumsagas. Egi Dayan Gas Odan. Ayasto. Vipiat. Mina. Egi. Kita. Nina. It's got really small. So Egi Dayan, where I was living, Gumsa Gas Odan, Wayasto Wibiat, meaning Egi Vida Kochke Anit Sema, meaning a Madmoyan, O Wayasto E Wijiat, Wechkasinyak Edayan. Okay, any idea what I'm saying here?
Well, you've got a tornado.
There's a tornado in there. There's definitely a tornado involved. That's our Wayasto. Dang, tornado. I can't spell it. I can't say it.
ADO.
Just in the end, I guess that's four.
And you did something.
I did something. That is a lot. That is true.
And there's town in there.
There's a town involved. And I was involved in it.
Somehow you've got tobacco.
There's a lot going on. and I'll give you this. This will help a little bit. Little axe, Gumsagas. Gumsagan is an axe. Gumsagas is a little axe. So Little Axe Town, the town Little Axe here in Oklahoma. So Egi Dayan, I lived in Gumsagas Odan, Little Axe, the town. I put that there just to make sure y'all would know what I was talking about, I thought. Or I tried to help a little bit. Wow, Yasto, we biat, mina Egi Bida Kochke Anat Sema. So we What's biat?
Okay,
Came, but in the future, so was going, he or she was gonna come, so the tornado was coming.
Don't know what that is.
Metzana, I don't know. And pop it open right now.
Shock whoever's on the other side.
Yeah.
What's
Egi
it shopping?
bida kochke. And so I offered. I got it figured out. I heard this sound. I don't know. Oh, that's what I'm hearing. Okay. I get that. Now she's gonna chop up her block. That's like that's that sound. Okay.
It's kind of driving me crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. Minegi bida kochke. Bida kochke is another word to say like offer. On it, some sema, mina madmoyan. What is madmoyan? What is madmo?
Right.
Pray. Yan, bi. Ewigiat. What is gia? Go. Get in there. Go. Let's see. Hanet sema mina madmoyan. Oh well, yasto. That tornado. Oh well, yasto. Ewigiat. Wech kasinyak edayan. It's the direction.
Yes, but I'm trying to figure out which one.
north,
North.
West.
North. Yeah,
North.
north. The direction where it's cold, which is
Okay.
north. And then Edayan, where I lived. So the whole thing reads, where I was Egi Dayan, where I was living in Little Axe, Gumsaga Sodan. While Yasto, a tornado was coming. We be mina Egi Bida Kochke, and then I offered on it Sema, some tobacco, mina e Madmoyan, and I prayed, oh well Yasto, that tornado, e Wijiat Wechkasinyak, and that the tornado would go north of where I lived. And it did. It actually came right at my house and then turned. Like it was going down making a path of destruction. And the house that was like just a little bit north of me got leveled all the way down to the foundation. But it came right at my house. It went like this. It turned and then went straight north out of my housing complex. But the house over here, completely down to the cement. My house, it knocked the fence over, which was like a privacy fence, wooden fence, a lot of wind, and it took one shingle and it bent it up. That was it. I felt bad later. I thought, man, I should have prayed like go way far north or something. And I was thinking, man, but that's what I did. As soon as I knew that tornado was coming, I took that tobacco, that sema, and I prayed about, watch over me, watch over my family, watch over, take care of folks. But also I said, hey, go north of where I live so they won't destroy my home. And it did. Not saying it's going to work next time, but hey, I'm putting my tobacco out. I'll tell you that much. I'm not rolling the dice. I mean, it's those kind of moments that you're like, oh, okay. These ways of ours, they're powerful things, and you do these things and you live in a certain way, and those things are going to come back on you in a positive light or a negative light. I mean, it's like when you give things away, they say when you give things away, they come back threefold. Our people were never all about accumulating things and possession, like, oh, I have all of this and all of that. I'm not saying that it's bad if you have a few nice things in your life or whatever, but if you have, let's say, 150 eagle feathers, you got a problem. You don't need them. You need to give those away to people, give them to other people that can use them, give them to your relatives, make a fan, give somebody the fan. Don't hoard on to, especially traditional type things. Don't hoard them just to have them. Don't, if you've got some medicines or things like that for certain things, do you need 25 jars of the same thing? No, you don't. Or you got some wild rice and maybe you haven't been eating that manoman, so give some of that manoman to somebody else. Maybe a relative needs some for a feast or whatever, or a meal they're making. Pass some of that on. Don't hoard that together. Same with like when somebody kills their first deer. Traditionally, you're supposed to give that meat away. So what you do is you break that deer apart, you give it away, you keep a little bit, and you have a feast. You invite your relatives to come to that feast, your friends, whatever, invite them to that feast. And then there's even like a little thing that sometimes people will do where they'll offer that food to that hunter that actually killed it. They'll offer to him 4 times. And he's actually supposed to decline that food until that 4th time. He's supposed to, like, you offer him like, hey, you want some of this venison that we cooked up? And you're like, no, give it to our elders or whatever. Or here, you want some of this venison? They offer it to you 2nd time. No, maybe give that to the children, let them have some. Or offer you some more venison or whatnot. No, give that to our women folk here or whatever. And then offer it that 4th time. Yeah, I'll take it. But you're supposed to decline it, because 4 is a very sacred number for our people. There's 4 directions, there's four colors, 4 races of man, 4 medicines, there's 4 plays a part in a lot of our ceremonies. A lot of our ceremonies, they go for 4 days. Traditionally, we believe it takes a person's spirit 4 days to cross over. And so a lot of times in a lot of communities, you'll have a fire that's lit for those 4 days where people can go down, they can put some tobacco and offer that in the fire. And then the thing about funerals, we're not supposed to hold on to those type things. We're not supposed to hold on to that grief. You're supposed to let it, basically when those 4 days end, it's time that you have to let that go, because otherwise, in a way, you may be hurting that spirit's ability to translucent to that next stage of existence, if you will, because we're only spirits trapped in a physical being, is the way that I've always been told. But anyway, now I'm really getting out there. I'm really going. But
Before you switch screens,
do what?
before you switch screens, the word you used at the very last to say that you live, that like to go north of where you lived, was that the same word that you used for town?
No, it does look a little like that. It was actually this word right here. It's Edion, where I lived. Da is the verb to live in a location. It does look a little like Odon because it's really got ugly down here, but it's really an E with that. Edion.
Miigwetch.
Yeah, it got real sloppy down there. I apologize. It almost I can see how you'd think that. I mean, it looks a little like Odon. Honestly, when I look at it now, there's the DA. That could be an O because E didn't really become an E. And then you got like some other stuff there. So, and this is done. Okay, let's see here. But yeah, people, I mean, you'd be surprised some of the questions that people ask all the time about things that aren't, and a lot of our people don't understand even like moon time and things like that. And that's something that, as a guy, it's not something that I really want to like be the one that has to tell everybody about certain things like that. I mean, but you'd be surprised how many people don't understand that, hey, like if it's that time of the moon, that time of the month, you're not supposed to touch sacred things. You're not supposed to go to ceremony. You're not supposed to, unless it's a moon ceremony. I mean, I don't know how that works. That's probably more logical. But you're not supposed to do these different things. You're not supposed to touch food. You're not supposed to cook food. That if you want to get real serious about it, I mean, they used to say you're not supposed to touch the crops. I mean, back in the day, I mean, it used to be, and the thing about it was also seen as a reason that often women wouldn't go out and fast. Now, women can go out and fast, and I've even known women that have went out and fasted because they were called to do so, and that's okay. But occasionally they'd say that a woman doesn't necessarily always have to, because it's almost like you're being reborn in a way each month. It's like a rebirth or a renewal that you have every month as part of that period of time. That's funny. Anyway, but yeah. They used to have people, they would actually even build like a little separate like a little house or a little wigwam out away from the house, and one would kind of go out there for that time and then come back. But that's pretty hardcore. Today, it's more like, I would say it's more important to keep in mind just to not be around ceremonies. And sometimes it's awkward to have to ask somebody that. And I'm not gonna lie, I had to ask some young ladies one time. We were going to a sweat and they didn't know that rule. And so it made it more awkward because then obviously that one that was on her time didn't come, and you know what I mean? So it's good if women in our community make sure that we let other women know that, hey, these are kind of things that we don't do. It makes it better on people in general. But what else? Well, there's a lot of, so like Dodaugamuk. Okay, Dodaugamuk. Dodaugamuk. What is Dodaugamuk? Dodaugamuk is a sweat lodge. Typo, right? Dodaugamuk is a sweat lodge. And if you've never been to a sweat lodge, it's kind of hard to explain a sweat lodge to people that have never been to a sweat lodge. I always tell people it's kind of like a sauna, but like at church. It's like church at a sauna is the best way maybe to describe it, because, but even that doesn't really do it justice, because you can sit in a sauna and you basically you're the one controlling how much heat and how much steam that you're putting on those rocks, where in a sweat, there's a person that's running the sweat. So you're actually not even in charge of how much steam is actually being added. The other thing about a sweat is, okay, real quick here. If you've been to a sweat, oh, I got it here. Raise your hand or show me that you've been. So, or if you've never been to one, I'll try to explain a little better.
I've been in a sauna, but not a sweat.
Okay. So we got two people, one here, one online and one right here local that's been to one before. So that's good. But it's like basically, you know, it's like you take willows or you use elm, and you make a structure. And usually it's pretty low because you want it to be where you have to almost crawl in a little bit. You don't want to, I've seen some sweat lodges that are really tall where you could almost like walk in. I've even been to one that was like really tall, and I was like, man, this is not going to be very hot, because if it's that high, all that heat's going to run to the top. So usually you want them to be pretty low, and usually you want to be able to crawl into them, because that's part of the process. You're crawling into that sweat. It's kind of like you're humbling yourself by doing that as well. But Dodaugamuk means a sweat lodge. Nibdeschigan e kish or o kishki. Wejiaguan Shwadam o Dodaugamuk. So Nibdeschigan is a line of cedar. Wejiaguan goes in the direction of the Shwadam. What is Shwadam?
Fire,
What is it?
fire.
That's
Door.
Shkode. Door. It starts the same way as fire. Fire is. And actually, that would be a pretty correct statement, actually, because it does go from the fire to there. But I was just saying towards the door, but it does come from the fire, and then Dodaugamuk. So basically, you know, you got your fire here, you got your sweat lodge over here, and the opening like right there, and you have like a trail of cedar that goes up to your fire. And that's where your rocks. So what you're doing is you're taking your rocks and you're putting them in that fire, and you're warming those rocks up. And sometimes it takes a couple hours to warm them up. It just depends. But I mean, a lot of times, you know, the way I was taught to build a fire, if you do it like this, it's kind of a crude drawing, but like, and then you pile your rocks on, and then you load it where the wood's up like that, around the fire like that. And then as it burns down, you'll kind of get an indication that it's ready when this kind of drops. And usually you'll put 7 rocks in just to start out, just to kind of recognize the different directions, you know, the east, the west, the north, the south. you know, the earth, the sky, all my relations. Put 7 rocks in that fire at each of those spots, and then you can load the fire up with more rocks depending on how many you want to use. And it depends who's running and how many rocks you're going to use. Down here in Oklahoma, I've been to ones where they had like 100 stones. I've been to ones where they're like just like 36, you know, 48. Sometimes I'm not sure they knew how many were in there. I mean, so it's never an exact thing, but usually somebody will start with like those 7 and then they'll kind of build off of that. But the other thing is a lot of times when they first bring those stones in, you know, they have to shake all the ash off. They bring those stones in and then you start pouring that water on those stones. Usually you'll bring about half of them in to start with, and then they'll shut the door. And like I said, that's why it's different than like a sauna. I mean, it's pitch dark. Cognac, bidek, dodao gumgo.
Sin is the word for rocks, right?
Scenic rocks, plural, used in this sense, definitely. Cognac, bidek. Like I said, 4 is an important number. Even in a sweat, there's 4 rounds usually.
Yeah.
And usually, depending on who's running that sweat, they'll do them. A lot of times people will do it where they'll talk about the infants and stuff first, and they might talk about the women and the elder, and then like adults and then elders. Sometimes they'll say
Well, I
those that
think
are
that
sick.
Some of the sacred herbs, fun.
Yeah, a lot of times
stones,
people will put some like
or
cedar.
cocoa,
You'll put some cedar when those, now we'll usually talk to those stones when they come in and be like, bonjour, monsieur, hello, grandpa. We'll take a little bit of that kishki and we'll put it on those stones. Oftentimes some people will also put a little bit of yarrow, or not yarrow, bee balm, excuse me. Amowish in the water that they use for the sweat. Amowish, or it's called bee balm in English. And they also call it manashke, another word for it. There's a couple words for it, but they'll mix that in the water because that plant actually has a tendency to it helps you sweat. Like it actually will help you kind of cleanse yourself and will help you kind of sweat things out. And that's kind of what that sweat's doing. It's kind of ridding you of all these things that are kind of inside of you and cleaning you out. Gishka pakonyak bidik o dodao gamak. Let's say it here. Gishka pakonyak. This could be a little confusing because this word is not what you think it is, or it might not be what you think it is. Dark. Dark or darkness. Bidek inside o dodao gamak, that sweat. Ket namjana. Really or intensely. Ket namjana gishkapakonyak bidek o dodao gamak. So it's really dark inside that sweat. Very dark. It's pitch black except for those stones. I mean, those stones might just be glowing red. That's what you see. You see those glowing red stones. And then they start to pour that water on there and it starts to heat up real fast. But Dodao Gamak, that's one of our ceremonies. And it's a very old ceremony. I mean, you see it done in a lot of different nations, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily pan-Indian. Like they do them in different ways. Like in the Hopis, like they have like kivas, I think, that they go into. And the Navajos, I think, go into a similar type structure. So it's done differently in different communities, and it's also set up different. Like if you go to one that's Lakota, the doorway is usually the west, you know, instead of the east. For us, everything, you know, we enter the arena of the east. You know, we enter this life from the east. You know, the sun rises in the east. The way that we believe traditionally, the west is for spirits. The west is a doorway for spirits. Is the way that we go when we pass on, we leave this world. So we're not going in the west. We're exiting the world in the west. And when somebody passes away, a lot of times they'll be taken out of a west door or a western window if there is in that facility. So the west is that direction we travel for 4 days when we're making that journey home, or to the other side, if you will, that different plane of existence. Oh, man. And then, of course, we have our pawagan, our pipes, our pawagan. Yeah, so Pewagan. And Mkadeke. 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 Anybody know what that means? Fast. Kade means blacken. So it's your blackening of your face because traditionally when somebody went out and fasted, they would blacken their face. That's how, like, if you ran across somebody in the woods or something that was out fasting, you wouldn't know not to bother them or not offer them food because as a nice person, you're like, hey, you like something to eat? No. Oh, they're fasting. They blacken their face. So people used to traditionally, they used to blacken their faces. I've even seen that done too. For kids sometimes at funerals, they'll blacken the face. It's an interesting phenomenon. But Mkadeke is to blacken one's face, to fast. Pewagan is a pipe, Pewagan natuk. Pipe stem. Pewagan natuk. Pipe stem. Hey, how's it going? But a lot of these things, people, they ask you about different traditions and things like that. And a lot of them are just like little things. I mean, it's not like fundamental type things like other belief systems. You're not like, well, this, you do this, 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 and this. It's like you just kind of live your life. You live that Manop Madzu, that good life, that Manop Madzu. And when we talk about Manop Madzu and living a good life, we're really talking about living a life that's grounded in our traditions, our language, our culture, our dance, our songs, just being a part of all of that. That's that good life, that Manop Madzu that we're talking about. So, but Pewagan, pipes have been around a very long time too. They found them at a lot of these burial sites and things like that. We've had our pipes for a long time, but you go back to people always say, well, what's the oldest way of belief? It's really just using that sema, just taking that sema, praying that sema, putting that sema down. Pewagan is just a tool to use to kind of call on things, but you can do these things with just sema. If you just have a strong enough belief in that tobacco, that sema, and that prayer, and just putting that down, either in a fire or putting it on the north side of a tree, that's good enough. I mean, that's going to cause some activity. It's going to have some ramifications. There's going to be some help and some guidance that are coming your way. The other thing is you have to be aware of your surroundings. The reason that we go out and fast, and if you've ever been out and fasted, or you've ever went a long time without food, you realize that the world kind of goes by like this. Like everything's going like this. But in reality, it's going like this. We just see it going like this. So we're all obsessed, like, oh my God, what time is it? It's 3:30. I gotta be out. I gotta be at the store closes at the bank closes at 5. I gotta be over here. What am I doing at 10 o'clock? Like we're obsessed with time and all these things. And because of that, we lose sight of the things that are right in front of us. A lot of times the messages that are being sent to you are right in front of you. Like all you gotta do is open your eyes. Like you just slow down a little bit. You take a little time. You walk maybe in the woods. Maybe walk a little bit. Look around. Look at the flower. Kind of breathe it in. Kind of smell it. But when you go out and fast, you have those moments where you can actually do that. Where the world slows down. Suddenly time doesn't matter anymore, and you're just there. And when you're not eating, you're not obsessing about, hey, what's my next meal? What's for dinner? What's for lunch? You just everything slows down, and you're more cognizant of things around you, things that you maybe took for granted before. They're like right there, like, oh, I've seen it the whole time. Why didn't I see that before? And that's kind of what that fast does. It kind of brings us to that more calm kind of state of being where we actually pay attention to these signs, because we have them in dreams too. Yabwe, it's how we say dream. We say Yabwe. And a lot of dreams is where we get messages too. I mean, not all dreams are messages. Not all dreams are messages, obviously. Some dreams are just craziness, like your mind kind of having a bunch of clutter, just kind of letting go of it. But occasionally we have those dreams where you're like, you wake up, you remember it, you're like, okay, and it's actually straight up just a message about somebody or about something. Sometimes people will visit you in your dream, maybe people that have passed on. They say if you dream about your ancestors, maybe your parents or grandparents, somebody that is now passed on, that's kind of an indication that you need to have like a ghost supper. You need to feed those spirits. That's why they're coming back. And you can have a ghost supper, a jibakwe for those people that have passed on. And you can do those regularly. You can do it a year after somebody's departed. Some people will do them every November. They must do it like a similar time that people do like Halloween. They do like in that period of time, like they do a jibakwe, a ghost supper. And it's always a good thing to do to acknowledge us. But you don't even have to have a big to do. Like you don't have to have a fire going the whole time or have a huge feast. You can just make a spirit plate too and offer that for, just take a little bit of food off offering of what you're eating, put it on like either some birch bark or something that's biodegradable, or and a little bit of water and some samon, take it out and set it by a tree, or you can, if it's on birch bark or something like that, you could put it in a fire and burn that up and make that little spirit plate offering. And you can do that at any type of ceremony you're having. You could be doing a sweat, you could be doing anything, or seasonal feed. You can make a little spirit plate and offer that to the fire and whatnot. But anyways, I don't know what got me on this tangent today, but maybe it was a good one, maybe it wasn't. Yeah. But if you have questions about things, I'm more than happy to address them with you, why we see different things the way we do. And if I know, I'd be happy to share that with you. But that's why it's hard sometimes for people, because they'll come to me and they'll be like, they want like a manual for being Potawatomi. Like, what is it that, okay, well, first you got to do this, and then you get your eagle feather. There's no like just natural order of progression. A lot of stuff is about relationships. And that's what you come to realize within the language. It's a relationship between you and the earth. It's a relationship between you and your relatives. It's a relationship between you and that medicine. It's a relationship it's all relationships. It's like a great story I could share with you is one time Godak Yeah, it's all over my head, so I don't do it like that. Okay, Godak Gindo Wabdan Onit Shkitagan Tukwakik Nikan Donald Minanin Chongi Gim Kesin Onit Ganowish Gek P Emakamak Onit Egi Gamoan Ilja Egi Webi Wayak Iba Dabian. So Godak. Godak. You've heard that one before now. Once upon a time. Godak Nagi Do Wabdan. What's Wabdan?
To see?
To see it. What's that in Do? Try and see. So I did try and find, try to look for. I went looking for. I was trying to find. Gi do wabdan on it shkitagen. What's on it?
Some.
Some. What's shkitagen? Anybody?
the stuff that you use to start a fire. Was
Yeah,
fast.
it is. It's a growth that grows on yellow birch trees, and we use it for starting fire. But it's a plant, or it's actually like a not a moss, but like almost like a mold type spore type thing. What's it called?
It's a lichen.
A lichen, that's the word. Good. Glad you threw that at me. Lichen, yeah. So it grows on trees, and it tends to grow on yellow birch trees. Okay, and so Nikon Donald Minanin Chon Gim Kesin on it Ganowish Gekpi Kemak Mina Egik Moen Iljegi Webi Wayak Iba Dabian. So I'll explain some more about it in a second. But Nikon,
Friend,
my friend, yeah. Donald, Minanin,
And
and I. Cho Nagi Kesin. This comes from the verb makan.
did not.
Did not find. Con is the verb to find. So I guess because we didn't find, but I didn't find. I didn't find some for a long time. Gekpi, what's Gekpi? Finally, Makamak, we found. We found it, or we found some. Mina Egik Moen,
And it rained.
and it was raining, and it rained. Ilja,
then, right?
yeah, then. Egi Webi We Yak. What is this verb? Webi We. Ran away. Egi Webi We Yak. We ran away over there, Iba, to the car. Dabian. So, Godek Ngin Do Wab down on it. Shkatagan. Oh, I didn't do this. Tukwaki.
Medicines.
What is it? Tukwaki.
Forest.
Forest or woods, yeah.
What if
You're thinking Shkuki.
Yeah. that's it.
It definitely starts with a, it's got parts of that. It's got the key. It's got the mess.
Yeah, you're right. There's
Tuckwater.
that in Chuck right there, bigger than Dallas. Confused me in.
Nikon Donald Minanin Cho Give Makasin on it. Gino Wish Gekpi Emake Mak Mine Geek Moen Ilja Egi Webi We Yak Iba Dabian. So the way this story basically went was I went out looking for some skitag and went to this large area where there's lots of weeguas, lots of birch bark, weeguas sata. A lot of birch bark trees, and occasionally there would be some zao. Weeguas took some yellow birch, and those yellow birch, there'd be like one or two yellow birch in a big pack of just birch in general. And so we went looking for this skitag and this growth. We looked all over the place, and finally it started to rain. We went back to the car. We got back to the car, sat down in the car, and looked like right over here, like maybe 50 feet away. There it was, growing right there on that tree. And we're just sitting there thinking, like, for real? But we couldn't see it because we hadn't developed. But before that, we did find some in the woods. We found a little bit in the woods. Put our Sama down, took a little bit of that off the tree. We were really happy because we found this little amount, and got back to the car and we found a bunch more. But that's because we developed a relationship between us and that medicine. We went out there, we put our tobacco down, we found it out there in nature. We had that relationship that we had created. And now it's like I can find it again without any problem. And later on, like a couple years later, I took somebody out in the woods when we were at one of the gatherings, and I showed them where it was, and I was able to find a couple of nice sized chunks of it without any problem. But it was because that we had, I created that relationship, and that's what I told that person. I said, hey, you find it one time, you're going to be able to find it again because you create this relationship between you and that medicine, you and that plant, and you will always remember where it is. It just, bam, got that relationship. And that's how it is with all of these things in our traditional way. It's about relationships, the tobacco, the medicine, the teachings, the language. The language will take you in contact with elders that know other things too. Like you'll meet somebody that speaks language that might know about making canoes, or you might meet somebody that does baskets. But a lot of people that do traditional crafts and things like that also, either they know the language, they know different cultural teachings that they can share with you about all kinds of stuff, whether it be their knowledge of canoes or their knowledge of basketry or their knowledge of dance or different, so it's all about relationships. And so like there was a young guy that was on one of these websites. I don't know if it was the Prairie Band one or the Citizen Bottom one. I don't know. There was one of these Potawatomi sites that was asking like, hey, I live in Alaska. How do I become connected to my culture? How do I learn my culture? It's like, it's about relationships. What I tried to say to the guy was, I think it was a guy. I can't remember. It was one of these names that could have been a guy or a girl. I think it was like, I think it was a guy. Anyway, and I said to the person though, I said, hey, it's about, I said, the best thing you can do is get to know people, get to know other Potawatomis, hang out with other Potawatomis, hang out with them in your community, or go to these Potawatomi gatherings, hang out with other Potawatomis there. It's about relationships. It's not like you can just give somebody like, well, here's the manual of how to be Potawatomi, how to be Anishinaabe, how to be Native. Bam, there it is. Go forth. It's not like that. And it's funny because people wish it could be that way. Sometimes I have people, again, that say, hey, is there some kind of book or that I could read? I'm like, sure, you can read all kinds of books. You want to read about the perspectives of Anishinaabe from Chimokman, or Wemtogoji people, or, from French or non-native people. If you want to do that, you can read all kinds of books, but you're going to get their biases and their opinions. Some of it's good. There's some history in there and there's some knowledge that you can get, but to be Potawatomi is simply to live a traditional life. Is just to do it. It's like the old Nike saying, just do it. Start putting your tobacco down. Start praying every day. Every day put that same on down. Yeah, bidak kwachka, same migwech jakshkago, minogis. Thank you for everything in this nice day, this beautiful day. Just say a short prayer like that and put your same on down. Start to pay attention to things that are around you. Try to, non go again zane get gishpen sometimes it's difficult when I'm remembering my dreams and things like that. Oh, relationships, huh? That's a good one. Relationships. So Denwe Ma again is like a relation. Denwe Ma Win would be like relationships. Denwe Ma is the verb to be related. Denwe Ma would be like relationships. Or you could say like, another way you could maybe describe this too, you could say like, what ties us together, to kobjige, what the thing that kind of like ties us or binds us together. Kobjige. Yeah. But Denwe Ma Win would be like relationship. Yeah. Yeah, because that's what it is. It's connections to one another, connections to the earth, connections to the water. It's if you sit out in nature and you humble yourself, you go out and you fast, you have a different relationship with wanganos, with the ants, with the bugs. You don't look at them the same way. You don't think about, oh, there's a bug, let me stomp on it, oh, it's an inconvenience. Like, oh, look at that creature. That's okay. And you look at it and you realize that it's on the same plane of existence as you. It has a purpose, a reason for being here, just like you do. And your existence, your moment in time isn't more important than that ant's. You may think it is, and you may believe it is, but that's on you. You're not any more important than that ant. I'm not saying that to bring you down or hurt your vibe or something, but it's just, we're right there.
But that's one of the distinguishing things to me is that we don't have that human exceptionalism in our worldview.
Yeah, the world, and that's why I always tell people, if you want to be Potawatomi, you want to understand what it is to be Anishinaabe, learn your language. Your language, inside your language is all this understandings and worldview, like you're saying, the way we see the world, those 7 grandfather teachings, that level of humility, all those thoughts and things are inside of our language. So, yeah. See, I had a question here. I think I answered it already. That was the one about relationships. I think. Yep. Okay. Double check there.
And you're over time. It gives you.
Oh, my pastime? Okay, I've already passed that. I've also heard them talk about like levels above, like levels of 4 levels above and 4 levels below, like on the earth. You know, I've heard people talk about like tiers or planes of existence, you know, if you will, like heaven, like 4 levels to heaven or 4 levels below on the earth, you know, or these different entities and things exist. But yeah, that's probably good for a day though. That's a lot of stuff we talked about. And then we go sinja game dog windemuk ekkedyan gom. Hope you all enjoyed what I talked about today. A little bit off kilter, but like I said, it's just the mood I was in this morning or today. But I thought it would be good to talk about some of this stuff because, like I said, people often ask me that stuff, and I never really get a chance to address it on a larger scale or in more depth sometimes. And because there's just so much to that. It's not. And a lot of times it's like people want to know that stuff, but they don't even know where to begin. They don't know what the first question is. What's the first question? You know, I mean, I was always told Sama precedes all things. Tobacco precedes all things. You start with tobacco. Tobacco is that medicine to the east. It's that direction of new beginnings, of new life. You know, that Sama is your tobacco. But I mean, there's teachings about so many different aspects of our life. Everything from like keeping a little bit of the umbilical cord when a child is born, and then wherever you bury that umbilical cord, you know, that child will feel drawn to that area. And a lot of times people will say that sometimes the reason that people maybe are having trouble in their lives, or they're kind of here and there and they can't kind of find their footing, is sometimes they say that's because they're looking for their umbilical cord. They're all confused. They don't know where it is. I mean, they just got tossed out in the trash and they end up in a lamp, you know, it's this. And so they're just kind of wandering around trying to figure things out. Sometimes that's part of that process, is because and so those are things that you can do in your own life to maybe ground that next generation. They always say, you know, think of those 7 generations, and people just, they don't really understand what that means when you think about it. Like, I tried to explain this to somebody one time, and I was like, what you're really saying is, you're saying that the decisions you make, if they're big monumental decisions, you know, you want to recognize that that decision, not only does it honor the previous 7 generations that came before you, but that decision that you're making in that moment in time is not going to adversely affect the 7 generations to come behind you. You know, if you have kids or grandkids, and it's not even have to be your family, it could be your nieces, your nephews, your aunts, I mean, your cousins, it could affect those, but 7 generations beyond you. And that's a big chunk of time when you think about it. Even if you think of it in terms of like 50 years, people used to live like 50 years if they were lucky, you know, they were blessed to hopefully live 80, 90, whatever amount of years that we're able to live, 100, 110. But back then, even if you think of like 50 years, that's 350 years. 350 years before, 350 years to come. So we're talking about, if I'm thinking about the 7 generations before me, today it's what, 2020, that's what? 20, yeah, 16. If 350 years would be 16 something, wouldn't it?
2372.
Oh, the other way, yeah, 2372 that way,
Oh,
and then
you're
the
going
other way,
backwards.
16 like 20 or something, like back
Yeah.
1625. So basically, like when the Pilgrims showed up over here, that's the time period I'm talking about. Basically, first contact with all the way to now. How do these decisions that I'm making affect or honor the 7 generations that came before me? And like you said, 2300, and recognize those people that have yet been born to come. So it's a big way of thinking about the world, but it puts things in perspective, makes you realize that you got to sometimes take your time, and that's okay. Then people talk about Indian time and joke about that all the time. Like, oh, Indian time isn't really that you're running late. It doesn't have anything to do with being late. It doesn't have anything to do with being like, oh, I always show up late, ha ha ha. People like to joke about that, but what it really means is you do things in the time that it takes to get them done. If it takes you 6 months to get it done, it takes you 6 months. If it takes you 3 months to get it done, you get it done, but you get it done the time it takes. It's not like a one-stop bam, it's going to happen overnight. It's like when somebody offers you tobacco and asks you to name them. Sure, they might immediately know what they're going to name you. Like, bam, it might just be like moment, or the next night they might have a dream about it, but they might pray on it for a month. They pray on it 2 months, They might pray on it 6 months. Heck, they might pray on it a year. It really doesn't matter because it's not relative like that. It's like you have your entire life, your entire existence here, you know. And it's the same with learning language. It isn't going to happen overnight. It's not going to be like tomorrow the light switch is going to go on. Maybe it will. Maybe for you it's tomorrow. Maybe it's 3 weeks from now. Maybe it's a month from now. Maybe you just have these various little aha moments that kind of catch up to you. And that happens too, but it's a process. And as long as you keep after it, you keep working, you keep living that traditional way, eventually you get there. And then you get there and don't even realize how you got there. Like, how the heck am I over here today talking about traditional Potawatomi lifestyle and ceremonies and traditions? Like 30, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I would never thought that had happened, you know? But it did, but it took time and patience. So, Bama Amina.
I thought your digression was